What is good, people? Welcome back to another video on 8 Count. In today's video, I've got 15 points which I'd like to see implemented into EA Sports UFC 5. It's going to be my first video on EA Sports UFC 5 as we've recently got a hint that I guess the development for EA Sports UFC 4 is kind of turning down and they're, kind of full steam ahead into EA Sports UFC 5, which I guess is a good thing. So I'm really looking forward to this game alongside Undisputed as the combat sports sort of games. I think, in terms of my wish list, these are the 15 things which I think are kind of most important. If there's something I've missed, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. If you do enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We've got plenty more to come. And let's kick things off at number 1. I'd like to see online ranked updated. Personally, I feel like it's the biggest kind of mode in the EA Sports UFC 4. Not because it's just so brilliant. I think it's because they kind of neglected other areas of the game in terms of the offline and other things they could do online. But in terms of rank, what I'd like to see changed is right now we've got kind of basic, level 0 to level 20, or the kind of like max rating best players in the game. What I'd like to see changed is kind of like going towards more of like a Call of Duty rank system in terms of you're going up, you're not going levels. I'd like to see, your gold ranks, your bronze ranks, your silver ranks, you can get into all weird sort of gemstones if you want at the top end until you get to the very elite of the game. I'd just like to see it spread out a little bit more because right now, you could have 2 players who are level 14 and their I guess, talent in the game could be so far apart. I'd just like to see it be a bit more kind of focused on how good you really are. In terms of number 2, it also kind of applies to ranked is any weight, any time. I think in terms of rank right now, if you're looking for a fight, you're kind of at EA's kind of demand in which game you're going to go into. Are you going to be playing with featherweights? You're going to be playing with heavyweights? And I just don't think it's right. I think in terms of EA Sports UFC game, players should be able to play with their favourite fighters. Yes, that does, kind of lead to things which we saw in the past where, people would just use RDA non-stop. But I don't think that's a problem. I think people should be able to use who they want to. And I kind of understand why they've done it. They want all their player base playing in one sort of division. So, people aren't going to struggle to find matchmaking. And we're kind of seeing that now with Undisputed, what they're doing. But I think there's a fix to it, and I think the fix is number 3, which is crossplay. I think crossplay would be such a big thing for EA Sports UFC 5. Not only would it, help with other things, but it's also going to allow people to play with whoever they want to play with. I think in terms of PC, if they do end up going down that route, yes, it could probably lead to some problems, but that's up to them to fix at the end of the day. In terms of crossplay, though, I think, it definitely fix, these weight class sort of restrictions which we have right now in terms of, no, you cannot fight with lightweights because right now we're using heavyweights. That's something which I think is probably one of the biggest things and one of the things which led to the demise of EA Sports UFC 4 so quickly. So yeah, I'd love to see that changed. In at number 4, I'd like to see a grappling system overhaul. Right now, I just feel like the grappling is too static and it's not really a realistic sort of look of what grappling is. Yes, you should be able to look to control positions and you're not always going to have to be forced to, change positions instantly and make it look so fluid. But the way it is now, it's just way too static. I'd like to see more sort of sweeps from the bottom. I'd love to see, kind of scrambles and stuff like that, as well as a completely overhauled ground and pound system. What we have right now is not very, I guess you could say, is not really showing what ground and pound is like really at all. I think if you watch, MMA on the regular, you'll probably think that ground and pound can be absolutely terrifying. And right now in the game, you just don't feel that threatened. It's just not very intimidating at all. I'd love to see elbows introduced back into the ground and pound system as well. Right now, not having that is a big takeaway, especially in terms of cutting your opponents. In at number 5, I'd like to see a submission system kind of changed. Right now, the mini games that we have are, I would say, maybe better than EA Sports UFC 3. But once again, that's a debate as well because, it's kind of 50-50 in my opinion. They're both kind of the same thing. What I'd like to see changed is instead of focusing so much on a mini game, we're more focused on the actual submission. Because let's say I go and watch someone fighting on EA Sports UFC 4 and they're going for a submission, you're not really watching the submission, you're watching a mini game. What I'd like to see changed is a work around, I guess, more emphasis on the actual submission, because I think that's what it's all about. Whether they can do it or not, I'm not too sure, but it's definitely something I would like to see changed in the game. Another change I'd like to see is to the wrestling. In my opinion, EA Sports UFC 4 is a big upgrade in terms of the wrestling to EA Sports UFC 3. I'm not an expert in wrestling, but I would still like to see an upgrade to it. I think it went in the right direction, and they need to do that again. Whether they will, I'm not too sure, because I do kind of feel like they're kind of lazy in terms of the changes between striking and EA Sports UFC 3 and UFC 4. It wasn't too kind of big, so I'm not sure if we're going to see that sort of change in the wrestling, but I just like to see a lot more sort of different techniques and styles of the wrestling game. Right now it feels like, you know, you might have 5 or 6 different takedowns. I'd like to see more. That's just off the top of my head. I haven't actually thought about it, but that's what I'd like to see. More sort of abilities to wrestle, whether you're driving someone back to the fence or looking for takedowns out in the center of the octagon. Can you, like, you know, look for back exposure immediately and stuff like that, like we're seeing in real life right now. And in at number 7, kind of an upgrade to the striking. I don't think the striking's in that bad of a place in EA Sports UFC 4 in terms of a game. It's not that. It's definitely not a realistic sort of overview on what striking is, but what I'd like to see is subtle changes. Certainly, you know, some different techniques. Some of them look a bit dodgy, but more what I'd like to see is the ability to use angles. I think now, looking at modern MMA, angles are being used more than ever, and you're seeing that with the likes of someone like Alexander Volkanovski or someone like Shavkat Rakhmonov, who fought the other night. You know, really using angles to their advantage to get off on their opponents. But what we have right now in EA Sports UFC 4, I would say, is more like a cross system where, you know, you can go out to the left, to the right, you can go back or forward. So what I would like to see is actually like a star sort of 8-point system, so that you have the ability to kind of, you know, go off on slight angles. I'm not saying I want it to the extent of something like an Undisputed, which is in the development right now. But I think angles still have to play a part in the game, and that's something which I'd like to see. I think it give more of a skill gap to the striking elements of the game, and that's something which I would like to see personally. In terms of number 8, I've gone for improved AI and more true to life AI, I guess you could say. Yes, you want the AI to be challenging, but at the same time, I want to have a real fun experience with the AI. If I'm fighting, let's just say Randy Couture from back in the day, you know, I don't want him to fight like Rashad Evans. Although you could make a case, similar wrestlers with some decent boxing at times, they are completely different fighters, and I don't want the game to go in that sort of direction. I think you should have almost like a fighter style, which can be broken down into maybe outside fighter, something like that, like you're seeing in Undisputed. But then they need to go off another tree and branch into what sort of fighter are they in terms of that. And that's something I'd like to see. You know, I don't think Yair Rodriguez and Anthony Pettis should be the same, although they could be described as similar. If you understand what I mean. So that's what I'm going for. I would like a real true to life AI, which makes me feel like I'm actually fighting that opponent. In at number 9, I'm going to talk about offline again, because I really feel like it's been, you know, kind of left behind in the past. It's something which they're not really focusing on. But I think a great sort of career mode could really add to this game. I think the career mode what we have right now is meh, it's okay. It feels too kind of restricted in what I can and can't do, the risks and the rewards. I'd like to see something going back more to a UFC Undisputed 3, sorry, sort of model where there's more things you can do, there's more rewards, more risks, stuff like that. You know, if I'm taking damage on the chin, you know, frequently, it's got to affect my career drastically. You know, maybe I get a perk, which is a negative perk. I've got the glass chin, stuff like that. If I get an injury and I keep, you know, aggravating this injury, I'm going to become injury prone, stuff like that. I'd like to see more sort of, you know, abilities to go up and down in weight, really take control of your career in a new career mode sort of, I guess you could say, effort. In at number 10 is another offline game mode I'd like to see brought back from the past. UFC Undisputed 3 had the title mode, and I can't remember if it was Contender or Challenger mode or something like that, where you would take a fighter. It could be any fighter. He could be ranked number 1 in the world. He could be ranked 50. It doesn't matter. You start off at a point where you'd be on the fight night cards, working your way up to the pay-per-views. you keep getting wins, you could get into a title shot. You was allowed 3 losses before it was game over, and eventually you could win the title, and then you could defend that title onwards. But to defend the title with a new fighter, you had to do the same process, and it was kind of a grind, but it's a fun one, and I really enjoyed it, and I'd like to see that brought back. In at number 11, I guess you could say an online and offline mode, because you could integrate it into different ways. But I'd like to see Pride brought back. I think in terms of the people who have watched Pride and loved it, it's more of the sort of brutal aspect of some of the techniques, which definitely aren't kind of regulated in modern day MMA, especially in the States. So yeah, I'd love to see that sort of style of fighting brought back, with the soccer kicks and knees to the head of a grounded opponent, stuff like that, and also the ability to fight MMA inside of a ring. There's just something about a ring which I just prefer over a cage in general, and I'd like to see that brought back in EA Sports UFC 5. At number 12, I'd like more fighter animations. Right now, I would say the animations list in EA Sports UFC 4 is kind of poor. Like, yes, they have a lot of animations, but there's not a lot of different similar, like, there's not enough jab animations, there's not enough straight hand animations, and fighters just end up feeling the same, just different numbers to them on what level their overhand is and stuff like that. I'd like to see more sort of fighters having specific animations, like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson or a Dominic Cruz, for example, because these guys, when you use them, it's actually fun because they're different to everyone else. I'd like to see this kind of going along the board, that, you know, I understand you're probably not going to get 100% of the roster to feel unique in a way, but if you could get something like 50%, you know, that would be banging. You know, if all the top fighters felt unique, if you felt like using Volkanovski was special because he was able to do things which you could see in real life. That's something I'd like to see going forward. In at number 13, I would like to, this might just be one for me, but in terms of ranked and online, we've got to make separate ranks for official fighters and creator fighters, because right now, it's one of the worst things. I just hate coming up against calves. Maybe I'm boring, but it doesn't do anything for me. Like, people running around with pink hair and looking silly. Look, I guess there's something for everyone, and if they want to take it into a calf mode, that's fine. Like, but for me, it just doesn't do anything for me, and I'd like to see them separated personally. In at number 14, I'd like to see a change to the fence grappling. Right now, it just seems kind of too boring in terms of the way it works. It's always the same. You're going back and forth, sliding. I'd like to see something changed, you know, an overhaul to that in particular. You know, you're seeing in a week, I think it was the Cuban Missile Crisis fight, what's his name, Julian Marquez, where he's kind of up against the fence, and his opponent, was it Marc-Andre Barriault, was just digging into the body with uppercuts. You don't see that in the EA Sports UFC 5, because it's always an underhook here, and they're doing everything else here. I'd like to see, yes, that part of the game being, you know, still being there, but more sort of abilities to take different sort of places on the fence, and just making fence grappling overhaul, you know, just making it different, so it's not always the same. I think, you know, having differences and not everything always being the same would be a big improvement. And last point, which is one which I don't know if it bothers everyone else, but definitely bothers me in terms of some of these fighters, is the fact that they look way too big for their weight classes. You know, the types of like Corey Sandhagen, Caitlin Chukagian, they look like they got Bigfoot silver, but they're in low weight classes. You know, their models aren't actually the correct size. I'd like to see little things like that, you know, kind of change, because it does take away from the experience of the fight. But yeah, guys, that's my 15 list. If there was something that I missed, be sure to let me know. I know I probably missed out damage. I would like to see damage changed as well, like they're doing with Undisputed, how cuts actually make a difference. That would be cool. But if there's anything that I've missed, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be back this week. I think I'm going to do my Tank versus Ryan Garcia prediction, as well as discussion around Undisputed and the direction the game is kind of heading in. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.